Chapter 2, Left Behind, Still Standing. Some wounds don't come from what is done to you, but from what is not. After everything came out, my mother could not be with my father anymore. What he had done changed everything. She was disgusted, hurt, and traumatized herself. Still, she made the decision that my brothers and I would continue living in the same house for 2 more years, until I was 12. Though my father had never touched me again, the damage was already been done. Living under the same roof with him was a daily reminder of what I had survived and how unprotected I had been. During that time, my mother began to change. She didn't want to be home anymore. She confided in me about things a child should never have been burdened with, telling me about earrings another man had given her, and revealing that she was having an affair. I was too young to understand any of it, yet old enough to feel the weight of it. She didn't have anyone else to talk to, and I became the one she leaned on. Looking back, I know she was traumatized too. She had me at 19. She was young, overwhelmed, and carrying wounds of her own. Wounds I would come to recognize more clearly in later chapters. During these years, I slowly lost contact with my father's side of the family. By the time I was 12, I hardly saw them at all. Then in 1988, after I finished 7th grade in Salisbury, everything changed again. My brothers and I were sent to live with my grandparents. We cried. All 3 of us chased my mother's car as she drove away, begging her not to leave us there. She left anyway. Years later, she told me she cried every time she came to see us. At first, she visited weekly, then monthly, then only on holidays. Eventually, she was mostly gone, living with a man who would become my stepfather, a man who did not want children. He already raised his own. In many ways, she chose a man over her kids. I understand more now than I did then, but that understanding doesn't erase the feeling of being unwanted. Living at my grandparents' house was hard in ways I didn't yet have words for. There were 12 of us under one roof. My grandparents, 5 uncles, and 2 aunts, my brothers and I. There were only 3 bedrooms. My grandparents had one. My 2 older uncles had the other 2 bedrooms. My aunts and I slept in the attic, and the other 3 uncles slept on the couches in the living room. My 2 aunts and I were crammed under a peaked roof with barely enough room to stand in the attic. Mice ran freely. I slept with my head covered, feeling safer there than anywhere else. When traps caught the mice and they died somewhere unseen, the smell lingered for days. It was awful, but I endured it. There was little warmth in that house. Yes, we had heat, but love was not openly shown. Everyone was hard because life had made them that way. Swearing was constant. Anger simmered just under the surface. I kept to myself just as I always had. I cleaned constantly, washed dishes, did my own laundry with my grandmother's wringer washer, and hung clothes to dry outside or in the basement when it was cold. Showers were rushed because the well water would run out. I kept all my personal items in my space because if I didn't, they would be used up. Privacy didn't exist. Food was scarce. My grandparents received state assistance, and once a month we'd get frozen pies, 6 of them. Each of us got a half of one. If you didn't eat your portion immediately, it would be gone by morning. Every now and then we would get chips or soda. I was a picky eater, and during summer especially, I would often didn't eat much. I graduated high school weighing only 87 pounds. My uncles would sometimes buy discount, out-of-date lunch cakes from a bakery down the mountain, and we'd eat them frozen straight from the freezer. School lunches during the week were often my most reliable meals I had. At 13, I got my first period. I was playing near the sawmill below us, sliding down piles of sawdust when it started. I went to a neighbor for help, and she gave me pads. When I ran out, my grandmother told me to cut up an old rag and use that instead. I was devastated. I had gym class. I was embarrassed and scared. That was the moment I decided I would never ask for help again. I left a message on my mother's answering machine, begging her to leave pads in the mailbox. That was the last thing I asked her for. Instead, I got a job shoveling pig manure, which is very runny, by the way, and hard to shovel, working at a butcher shop. Oh, that was bad. And later cleaning the high school through a program that helped kids from poor families work. I've been working ever since. Church became my one place of quiet. My grandmother took us every Sunday. I didn't truly know God yet, but I knew of Him. I journaled constantly and listened to the radio. Those were my lifelines. Writing became how I survived my own thoughts. Prayer came slowly, awkwardly, but it was there. School at Berlin was a fresh start, and I was grateful for that. No one there knew what I had been through. Still, I was painfully shy. I was small, not even 5 foot tall yet, in a family of giants. And kids teased me relentlessly. I loved learning, though. I always had. I could read, draw, write, and learn faster than most. Even as left-handed child forced to adapt to right-handed tools, learning was the one thing that no one could take from me. Safety, however, continued to feel fragile. One night I fell asleep on the couch, and an uncle who was close to my age touched me inappropriately. My body reacted before my mind did. Trauma woke me up screaming. I ran. I eventually tried to leave my grandparents' house altogether, attempting to emancipate myself, but I didn't make enough money to survive on my own. I had no choice but to return. After that, changes were made. My grandparents built me a small bedroom with a locking door. It didn't have a handle, but it locked, and for the first time, I felt a measure of control. It was still far from perfect, but it was safer than the attic, and I held on to that. I carried a lot of guilt from those years, things I didn't understand at the time, things born from confusion and lack of guidance. Those pieces of the story I name now only to be honest, not to condemn myself. I was still a child, doing the best I could with what I knew. Looking back, those years were brutal, but they shaped me. They taught me how to work hard, endure discomfort, and survive without being rescued. They also taught me solitude. Even now, I don't need validation from others. I learned early how to live inside myself. That came from trauma, but it also became strength. I'm not telling this story to be pitied. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. There is more chaos ahead, more grief, more loss, more redemption still to come. But this chapter is where I learned how to stand even when no one came back for me.